All right, welcome to our explainer for Module 4. We're going to break down everything you need to know about interviewing, especially to get you ready for those exams.
So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the core ideas. Then we'll get into the different types of interviews you'll see. After that, we'll cover the how-to, the process and rules. Then, we'll talk about the skills that'll make you successful. And we'll wrap it all up with a final exam review to really test your knowledge. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, the core of an interview. So what exactly is an interview when you boil it down? Let's start with the official definition.
So, an interview is a goal-oriented, interpersonal communication. Now, the key phrase here, the one you absolutely have to remember, is goal-oriented. This isn't just a casual chat, right? Every interview has a mission, a specific purpose it needs to accomplish, whether that's hiring someone, solving a problem, or getting information.
Okay, so if every interview is defined by its goal, it makes sense that there are different types of interviews, right? Let's get into the main categories you'll need to know for your exam.
You can see we've got 5 main types here, all based on their purpose. You have employment, performance appraisal, counseling, disciplinary, and persuasive interviews. Now for your exam, the trick is to simply connect the name of the interview to its goal. If you can do that, you're in great shape for these kinds of questions.
And this table here, this is a fantastic study tool. It breaks everything down so clearly. The type of interview, its main goal, and who's usually in the room. This is exactly the kind of thing they love to test you on, asking you to compare and contrast. So this is a slide you might want to spend a little extra time on.
Okay, big heads up here. This is an MCQ alert, and you'll want to pay close attention because this is a spot where a lot of students get tripped up, and it's a perfect place for examiners to put a tricky question.
So your course material actually categorizes interviews in 3 different ways. You've got by purpose, that's the why, like the employment or disciplinary interviews we just talked about. Then there's by format, that's the how, is it on the phone or a panel interview? And finally by stage, that's the when, like a screening interview that happens early on. The absolute key for your exam is to read the question carefully and figure out which category it's asking about. Is it a why, a how, or a when? Getting that right is half the battle.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the interview playbook. Here, we're going to look at the process and the rules that apply to pretty much any interview you can think of.
So, planning is everything, and a well-planned interview follows these 5 simple steps. First, you state the purpose, then decide the structure. After that, you get info on the other person. Step 4, you think about the questions you'll ask. And finally, you plan the physical setting. Following this checklist just makes sure the whole thing is effective and stays on track. It's really the foundation of good preparation, no matter which side of the table you're on.
And speaking of rules, ethics are a huge part of this. This chart does a great job of showing the responsibilities for both sides. Now here's a key distinction for your exam. Notice that the interviewer's ethics often have a legal side to them, like do not ask illegal questions. That's a big one. For the respondent, or the person being interviewed, the ethics are more about being professional, honest, and respectful.
Okay, so we've covered the types and the rules. Now let's talk about you. What skills do you, as the respondent, need to really succeed in an interview? Let's get into it.
Let's start with a really powerful number, 47%. That's a huge number, right? Almost half of all interviewers said they decided not to offer a job to someone just because that person had very little knowledge of the company. If that doesn't tell you how important preparation is, I don't know what will. It's not optional. It's absolutely critical.
So, to make it simple, we can group the key skills you need to master into 4 main areas. First, there's preparation. That's doing your homework on the company. Then you have communication. Speaking clearly, good body language, that sort of thing. Next is professionalism, being on time, being polite. And finally, answering, being honest and positive. If you can work on all 4 of these, you're going to make a really strong impression. Okay, time for the final section, the exam review. This is where we put everything we've learned to the test. Let's see how you do with some real exam-style questions. All right, first question. A meeting to investigate an employee's poor performance is which type of interview? Take a look at the options. Think about the key words here, investigate and poor performance. Which one of these fits the bill?
And the correct answer is C, disciplinary. Why? Because a disciplinary interview is specifically for investigating things like poor performance. Now, let's look at why the others are wrong, because this is a classic MCQ setup. A, counseling is for emotional problems, not performance. B, panel is a format, not a purpose.
And D, screening is a stage in the hiring process. See how they try to trick you with those different categories?
Okay, question number 2. Which of the following is an ethical guideline for the interviewer? The key word here is interviewer. This one is all about knowing who is responsible for what. Think back to that ethics chart we looked at.
So the correct answer here is D. Do not ask illegal questions. This is a big responsibility for the person conducting the interview. The other options, A, not wasting time, B, not boasting, and C, being honest, those are all ethical guidelines for the respondent, the person being interviewed.
And our final practice question. According to the material, which of these are the 3 basic stages of interviews in a hiring process? That word stages is the big clue here. Remember that MCQ alert we had about the 3 different ways to categorize interviews?
The answer is C, referral, screening, and selection. These are the steps, the progression in a typical hiring process. Let's quickly look at why the others are wrong. A lists formats. B lists types by purpose. And D lists different interview styles. This question is a perfect example of why you need to know those 3 categories we talked about earlier.
Okay, let's wrap this up with a high-yield summary. These are the absolute must-know points from this module. If you can remember these 5 things, you'll be in a really good position for your exam. First, an interview is goal-oriented. Second, remember the 3 categories: purpose, format, and stage. Third, know the 5 planning steps. Fourth, understand the core ethics for both sides. And finally, don't forget that 47% statistic. Preparation is key.
And before we go, I want to leave you with something to think about. After everything we've discussed, what is the one single skill that you are going to focus on for your next interview? Really think about it, because that's how you take this information and make it useful in the real world.
And that's a wrap on our explainer for interviewing. Thank you for tuning in, and best of luck with your preparation.